coffee. It'll be a long session, but it should be good.
Okay, Megan, our breakout rooms are closing now, so we'll get started.
Great.
Give it a 5 seconds.
Get started shortly, folks. You're very welcome. Now I think that's everyone back in. Okay, so it's just 11:05 now, guys. So I'll start off. You're very welcome to this morning's webinar, Helping Your Enterprise Win with Data. This webinar is brought to you by the Data Value Hub. My name's Megan, I'm the Zoom master for today, so we'll get started shortly. Just before we start, I want to go through some etiquette for today's session. Can you please make sure that your mics are on mute? We will be recording this session, so feel free to turn off your camera if you're not comfortable with this. Both the recording and the slides will be available shortly afterwards. We're happy to encourage discussion. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to pop a question in the chat box and we'll get to it during the Q&A session at the end. For those who want to ask questions at the end during the Q&A sessions, just unmute your mic and ask away and the speakers will get to you when they can. So with that said, without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to our first speakers, Paul Clifford and Brian Quinn.
Paul and Brian, you just need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Paul, are you okay?
Okay. Morning, everybody. My name is Paul Clifford. I'm Director of Services for Economic Development at Monaghan County Council, and you're very welcome to the launch of the North East Digital Value Hub this morning. Monaghan County Council is the sponsor of the North East Digital Hub, which is funded by the Enterprise Ireland Border Stimulus Fund. We're delighted to have over 150 SMEs registered throughout the region, registered for today's online launch. And I'd like to welcome Martin McVicar, Managing Director of CombiLift, and all those presenting here today. We're extremely grateful for the support and the goodwill we've received so far from our partners, Microsoft, Insight, IMR, ICHEC, CombiLift, the Educational Institutes, Enterprise Ireland, the local enterprise office, and Enterprise in Monaghan. And in advance, I'd like to thank Deirdre and Megan, our Zoom masters, for our sessions here this morning. So, with our new CEO, John Shaw, we're looking forward to working with you in driving the digital transformation within the traditional manufacturing sector throughout the region. You might ask, why is this project based in Monaghan? It's based in Monaghan because we're the sponsors and we apply to Enterprise Ireland for the funding, but our reach is regional and beyond. Now, we started this journey a number of years ago. In Monaghan, we carried an analysis of what characterises our local economy, and we identified 4 key factors that influence business in the area: population, education, income, and margins. The population in the northeast has remained relatively stable over the past 20 years. Each of the counties, Louth, Meath, Cavan, or Monaghan, Meath, Monaghan, Louth, and Cavan have experienced a slight increase in population, particularly in the areas focused near Dublin. But there have been significant demographic changes during this period within the region. We've seen a significant inward migration to the region since 2002, and we now have between 10 and 15% of our population who are non-Irish, and many of these are employed in the agri-food and service sectors. We've also seen significant changes in the participation rate in third level education over the past 20 years. Participation rates at third level are now at 50%. But graduate opportunities in the region remain low as 2% for level 8 graduates, according to the Higher Education Authority. There's too few job opportunities to attract our young graduates back to the region. The economy of the region is based mainly on engineering, agri-food production. The margins are low and the wage levels are, particularly in the agri-food sector. The Central Statistics Office state that the average total income per person in 2018 in County Monaghan is €23,276. In Cavan is €24,500 and it's €27,500 in Louth. But the average income levels in the Mid-East region are up on €32,000. And in Dublin, they exceed €37,000. So the average income in Meath, if you work in Meath and Kildare, is 33% higher than if you work in Cavan or Monaghan, or 18% higher than if you work in Louth. The margins in the agri-food sector are tight and very susceptible to exchange rate fluctuations, as many of you will experience in the recent past. Just in last Sunday's Sunday Independent, I noted that the Carey food, the consumer good division, operates on a 7.9% margin, but its taste and nutrition division operates on a 15% margin of turnover. So higher tech or added value products provide higher margins. The lack of graduate employment opportunities and the reliance on low skill, low pay employment in the agri-food sector has a significant impact on all aspects of our regional economy. In basic terms, there's less money to go around in our regional economy. The challenge for us is to increase employment value and margins for SMEs operating in the region. We do that by supporting skilled graduate employment and increasing the value of production in the region. So we move on to the next slide. We've a couple of slides just, and they're Monaghan focused, but we in Monaghan were very proud of the fantastic indigenous agri-food and engineering companies we have, and they're highly successful on a national, European and international market. And the next slide we have just again showing all the major agri-food processors in the country who have a presence here in Monaghan, and it's reflected that in the fact that 15 of the top 100 origin green food producers have a processing base here. And most of them are engaged in innovative export-driven processing. So on the next slide, recently we've also identified a significant number of emerging tech or database companies within the county. Some are in the traditional sectors, such as construction or engineering, but the key differential is their use of digital technology and innovation to design and manufacture new products and deliver new services. So if we just move to the next slide, in order to grow and survive, and given the challenges presented by Brexit, increased competition, globalization, new consumer trends, and evolving technology, we need continual innovation. We need to support our traditional employment sector so they can continue to compete and maximize opportunities for growth and market share. I just want to take a minute here to highlight two of the initiatives we've taken here in Monaghan in this area. In the agri-food sector, you'll see the graphic at the top left there. We're currently constructing a new £7 million research centre, the BioConnect Innovation Centre. That's resulted between a partnership between the County Council and Monaghan Mushrooms and other partners in the agri-food sector and education sectors. And it's supported by Enterprise Ireland's Regional Enterprise Development Fund. When it's complete in Q3 2022, this facility will house 125 graduates in a centre of excellence to research new product development and processing methods. The centre will also provide spin-out opportunities for new and existing companies throughout the region in new product development. The second initiative we have is the North East Focused Engineering Network, which was established in early 2020, led by Alan Kilpatrick. Again, funded by Enterprise Ireland, this network of over 180 engineering companies, both large and small, throughout Louth, Cavan and Monaghan, is developing connections, creating new supply chains and business opportunities, and encouraging collaboration and cooperation throughout these engineering firms. We ask, why would you import a component from another part of Europe if it can be supplied within this region? And small firms from the region under this network can come together to win more complex, larger contracts by networking and collaborating. We just won't move on to the next slide. The development of the North East Digital Value Hub is something that's evolved over the last 2 years. In 2019, Minister Humphrey's Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation was developing a policy in this area, Ireland's Industry 4.0 strategy, the digital transformation of our manufacturing sector. The strategy aims to stimulate SMEs in traditional sectors throughout the country and upskill their workforce in areas such as artificial intelligence, data analysis, machine learning and edge computing. We in Monaghan were lucky at the same time, 3 expats from the county working at that time in Intel and ICHEC, the Irish High-End Computing Centre. They approached Minister Humphreys to ask how they could help to move the county forward with its digital transformation. David Maloney, Peter Woods, and Brian Quinn really drove the project, and they're here with us today. They initiated the concept, organised the Artificial Intelligence Conference in CombiLift in November 2019. And Peter and Brian mentored the first group of participating companies who stepped forward following that conference and did all this on a voluntary basis. So that's the first steps leading to, they developed the application also for the hub to the point with Enterprise Ireland, to the point where we have a physically funded location here in Monaghan with a new CEO in place, John Shaw. And we'll be hearing today from the first participants in the program. So look, that's how we got to our launch here today. It's been made more difficult by COVID. We originally planned to knock on each of your doors and talk directly to you on the shop floor. But we thank you all for coming here, and we hope you see that this is a key path for the future of your business. So with that, I want to thank you again and hand you over to Brian Quinn, one of the founders of the project from Second Edge Technology Solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and good morning, everybody. We're absolutely delighted to be at this stage, and we're thrilled that so many people have joined the call this morning. Paul has teed it up perfectly. I won't add too much more to what Paul has said, but on behalf of the folks that Paul mentioned, Peter Woods, who's on the call, David Maloney, and myself, yes, we did bring a concept and put a concept on the table, but it was incredibly well received at that initial concept stage and since in the growth stage. And I absolutely want to call out Paul's support personally and that of Monaghan County Council, Finbar Daly and Monaghan Enterprise in Monaghan, and indeed Enterprise Ireland, Deirdre Craven and Aidan McKenna, who've all helped us evolve the concept into the reality that it is today, and actually has been over the last 12 months or so. So our initial concept was a consideration for a digital opportunity for the region. And the notion of a hub came quite early into the discussion. And digital hubs, as people will know, they're not novel. You know, they're quite a well-established concept. So we really thought hard about how we would differentiate this hub, how we would make this hub different, and how we would make this hub best in class as such. And there were three tenets to that thought process that we matured. One, that we wanted to bring state-of-the-art technology. You know, we didn't want to bring N-1 generation technology, N-2 generation technology. We wanted to focus on state-of-the-art technology. Therefore, we put a strong emphasis on artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is at the core of what data is about in the modern digital world. And really, in shorthand, it's about exploiting to the best possible value the inherent value in your data. There's lots of techniques and lots of approaches to doing that, but ultimately it's about extracting value from your data. And that's at the core of our hub as we move forward and as we've evolved the message and the vision and mission for the hub. The second tenet that we wanted to really differentiate on was collaboration and partnership. Peter, myself, and David, through our careers, are very aware of the excellence in science and technology there is in Ireland, and the excellent investments there has been in technology centres in Ireland. And to that end, and targeted by the kind of message that Paul has given around the competencies already in the region, including the agri-food and the engineering side, we specifically targeted 3 technology centres at a national level. The first one is Insight, which is the largest by investment technology centre in the country. Its focus is data analytics. And Noel O'Connor, Professor Noel O'Connor, who's the director of Insight, has been wholly supportive of this from the start and indeed attended the event in CombiLift. And we have Pat Dempsey, who will speak later on behalf of Insight. The second centre is the Irish Manufacturing Research Centre, which is based in Mullingar and run by Barry Kennedy. And equally, Barry has been incredibly supportive of our initiative from the start. And their focus, as is in the name, is on research advancement for the manufacturing sector. And that centre has been incredibly successful in its own right over the last 5 or 6 years. And Barry is here today and will speak later. And the third centre then is the centre that Peter works for, the Irish Centre for High-End Computing. And the one thing I'll say, Peter will also speak today, the one thing I would say about the Irish Centre for High-End Computing, people think of high-end computing and often think of supercomputing as in a big computer. Now that, of course, is an aspect of high-end computing, but really what high-end computing is about efficient computing at every level. be it at a server level, at a desktop platform level, whatever application you're running, how can you run that in the most efficient computing sense? And that's the skill set that ICHEC bring to the table. The final tenet we wanted to bring to the hub in Monaghan was practicality. You know, we didn't want it to be abstract. We didn't want it to be theoretical or academic. We wanted it to be practical. So we landed on two themes that we would drive at the center of it. One is a educational theme, and the second is an incubator theme. So both those we've set in place, and you'll get more detail about those today, but there will be an education upskilling aspect to the hub, and also a practical do your own project in the hub. So educational upskilling and an incubator. So finally, we're delighted to have John Shaw as our CEO. To have someone of John's experience, his network and his skill set is a huge asset to the hub and a huge asset to the region. And I personally, and also on behalf of Peter and Paul and all of us, wish John the very, very best over the coming years in building the hub. And finally to say, what will be successful, what will mark the success of the hub will be enterprise engagement and success that you as companies gain from the hub. It'll be judged on nothing else other than people like yourselves saying, we got value from it. That is the most important thing, and we won't lose track of that over the coming years. We need you, and we want you to gain value from it. So again, thank you for your time, and I'll pass it back to John.
Thanks, Brian. So at this point, we'd like to just do a poll. So you will shortly see as Zoom to get your sense of your current AI maturity in your organization. So that poll will kick off, and we'll present those results shortly. So basically, the poll is just going to ask a very simple question: where do you see your current maturity? So that'll flash up on the screen. You simply select question 1. The second question, what are your organization's AI skills? We'll cover that separately. You don't have to fill that in now. You can if you wish, but just focus in on the first question. Okay. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to hand over to Martin McVicar of CombiLift, and I'm going to hand over presenting to you, Martin. And I think Joe Coleman, also from CombiLift, will participate in the presenting. So I'm just going to hand over to you now, Martin, okay?
Perfect. Thank you, John, and thank you to everyone that introduced at the start. So I have to say, and I think just listen to Paul and Brian, it's really very positive when you see it was only 15 months from the initial get-together meeting back in November 19 to see the progress in terms of where the hub, the data value hub, has got to today. I mean, I think it's a credit to everyone involved, and you've done exactly what you said. You know, you would get it, you know, Monaghan County Council and everyone involved. So it's, I mean, for us in Monaghan, it's great to see how this has really taken off. And I'd just like to share maybe where the importance of digitalization is to CombiLift today and into the future. So I'll just give you a snapshot of our business here. And so I suppose if we take CombiLift, and I know many of you probably are somewhat familiar with our business, but as a company, we export to 85 countries around the world. 7% of our revenue goes into research and development. So we're heavily investing in research and development, but very much the majority of our R&D today, it's all focused on developing electric vehicles in-house and actually developing electric vehicles to be autonomous. That's really where we're putting a lot of our R&D investment. And if I take just in terms of, you know, the business, you know, when we started our company 23 years ago, myself and Robert Moffat, we were only manufacturing diesel and LP gas vehicles. Today, the majority of what, not the majority, so over 50% of what we produce are electric vehicles. In fact, I think it's close to 60% of the vehicles we manufacture today are electric powered. And I'll just share maybe some videos in terms of where we've progressed in terms of, so back about 18 months ago, we were at a very prototype stage with some of our electric vehicles. This is a pedestrian unit that we were developing it to be autonomous self-driving. And in terms of, this was a very early prototype. We were testing some of the concepts regarding safety sensors, you know, how we'd actually make a vehicle that could be self-driven, but also manually operated. And we knew when we were prototyping in this concept, you know, there is other companies out there that are very much embarking on automation. So we weren't going to be unique in just bringing a vehicle like this to market, but we use this very much as our beta test unit. But of course, I'm not saying everyone, but it's quite easy to make a vehicle that can drive itself, but it's trained with all the need in terms of where the vehicle gets the instructions, what to do, is where the whole critical necessity of data is. And I know Brian was referring to in terms of making use of the data we have, because when we deliver a forklift to one of our clients, you know, clients are using maybe sophisticated warehouse management software systems. Some of them are using in-house management warehouse software systems. Some companies have very little management on their inventory, and they're hoping they can purchase an automated vehicle to do the task. But an automated vehicle is going to be of no value to our clients unless they have enough information and in terms of instructions how to instruct these vehicles to do the task that's needed. And, you know, that was very much, you know, our early prototype stage. Then throughout 2020, you know, we very much changed our focus to developing vehicles around our core industries. And for CombiLift, one of our main core industries is handling of long goods. And when we say long goods, that's handling like packs of timber, steel, etc. You know, and very much our focus over the last 15 months has been bringing what we learned from our pedestrian vehicle into some of our larger scale units. And in terms of, I'll just share some of the footage where we've got to today. So this is a large one of our vehicles. We call it the GTE model. So it's designed for operating in very narrow aisle. But when you look at this vehicle, we have tried to make the unit as intact as possible, so it can still be operated by a traditional operator if need be, but the vehicle is actually controlled very much autonomously. And this is still very much at prototype stage, but now we're at a stage where we're actually handling real product, where we have it operating in I'd call it more in a warehouse environment. This particular unit is now at a stage where we're starting to run it from our CombiLift warehouse management software. And during the development of this, you know, this didn't just happen overnight. We've been working on this for now 2 years, but thankfully within the last 6 to 9 months, we have been collaborating very closely with the AMR, with Enterprise Errigal, and we've now partnered with a company in Belgium where we've received Eureka approval in terms of support through Enterprise Errigal to continue the development of this project, to bring it to a commercial vehicle. And you'll see with this, I mean, it might just look like another forklift truck, but there's so much involved in the whole software design, safety, meeting regulations, because we all know when you start to make a vehicle that's autonomous, you know, what safety standards do we have to meet? In many cases, many of these safety standards are not even written yet. So we as CombiLift, we're one company where we're putting our name forward. We want to actually get involved in writing the standards that's going to be relevant to autonomous self-driving forklifts for the future. So you'll see in this image, this is a charging point. So the vehicle drives itself in, it charges, it's based on lithium batteries. So it's self-charging. And what I'll do just in terms of maybe when this video is over, I let my colleague Joe Coleman just fill you in a little bit some of the detail in terms of where this project is moving to next and where it actually fits into CombiLift's business. Because for us, investing in R&D is key, but digitalization and very much focused on control systems and making our vehicles, you know, we can design vehicles to work in smaller spaces, but to make that efficiently and safely, and now at a stage where we're trying to develop it without operators. So Joe Coleman, my colleague that heads up the automation division, will speak to you just for a couple of minutes to round off. But thank you very much for joining this morning, or I look forward to the chat later.
Thanks, Martin. So as Martin has introduced, with this project, we're aiming to maintain our global reach. We've identified some key customers where we're going to pilot this type of technology. That'll be rolling out throughout 21. So we've our initial deployment coming up this summer in Kansas City in the United States. The type of customer required for these large scale applications, handling long goods, high volumes of long goods in an automated manner, it requires us to think globally and to reach out to the very largest operators in the material handling industry. So this type of application here is focused on steel handling. So there throughout the US, there would be a very large number of steel service centers, these are called. So they would be the type of customer that buys steel stock from mills, breaks mill bundles, and sells them on to factories and smaller steel stockists around the country. So these guys are the nerve center of the steel distribution within the United States. So that's a very strong area for CombiLift. It's a very challenging application for autonomous vehicles. We're handling long loads that overhang the vehicle. We're dealing with very intricate warehouse management systems. So in these sites, you could have 6,000 items of stock, no problem. So we're integrating into those types of software systems, which are very deeply ingrained into the business and the critical operations of these types of companies. So again, just to summarize the advancements in digitalization here, we're directly integrating CombiLift products now into customer warehouse management systems. That's done through an API. Basically, there's a huge amount of back-end management of the vehicles and the vehicle fleet, but the customer integration is as simple as possible through an API type approach. We're really ramping up our remote support and telematics capabilities. This has been brought forward by COVID. You know, we can't send engineers as easily as we could previously around the world. So we're upping the level of remote support and telematics possible in these vehicles. That goes hand in hand with remote software updates, which allows us to adapt the vehicles to changing requirements, changing applications that the customer might have over the life cycle of the vehicle. We're bringing back data on the truck performance and a collection of application-specific data, which will further our R&D in these niche applications that we already have a strong footing in. So that goes hand in hand with the collaboration project that Martin touched on there. So that's Enterprise Ireland Smart Eureka project in collaboration with IMR, who we'll hear from later. I think Barry will be speaking, and a Belgian company, automation specialist, Mabo. So thanks very much for your time here. We hope we've given you a quick run through of our digitalization efforts and the kind of the rollout and expansion of AI within CombiLift. It's a very exciting time for us as we begin to take these products into pilot sites and begin integrating into real applications and getting out of the test environment here.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Martin. So we just need you to stop sharing and I will resume the slide deck from my side. So, okay. So there's time for questions later, but if anyone has any question right now for Martin or Joe, maybe we can take one question at this point. Okay. No questions coming through.
People might need to unmute themselves, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, John, just a question to CombiLift. From a product sales to a software sale to recurring revenue, could you tell us about, or maybe talk to us about the strategy from moving from product to software to the recurring revenue model, the customer lifetime value with a recurring revenue model, and what CombiLift's experience was in that space?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. It's Martin here joined in. The reality is we don't really have a recurring revenue from what we're doing on the digitalization side yet, because this is very much R&D work. But I would say, we're at a stage where we're incorporating quite a lot of telematics into some of our vehicles, where we actually can advise our clients when trucks are due a service, etc. But the advantage of that is it's actually increasing our spare parts sales, for service components or service consumables. But the reoccurring revenue, like, we're still a very much a product-based business. We are in reality. And even though our strategy is to manufacture self-driving vehicles for the future, we're as a business, we're going to be very focused on customizing these vehicles around individual client needs. And because we're going to be continuing to build customized vehicles, the skill set we have in-house, we're still going to be a very hands-on business. We're going to have a combination of hands-on mechanics, technicians, mechatronics to build the vehicles. We're not going to be using robots to build our vehicles in the coming 10 years, even though we're developing vehicles that are self-driving. But that's going to bring us into an area where when we deliver an autonomous vehicle, that vehicle, it's not a piece of equipment the client's buying, and I think that's the angle you're going at. It's going to be a system they're buying. And very much our costs are going to be annual, there's going to be annual costs to that vehicle. We're going to be so entrenched with them clients in the future in that we're part of their, like, it's a bit like, in any business, we use SolidWorks as our design platform. For any business to move away from whatever software they're using, it's a big step. And when people start to use vehicles that are tied into their digitalization, you really become part of their network. You become part of their infrastructure. So it's going to be a more of a long-term partnership rather than a product partnership, which is going to be hopefully bring reoccurring revenue. But it's at a very early stage for us yet. But we see that as definitely a future. And it's going to be a different skill set, not just in our plant, but it's managing this overseas. We're going to need skilled software engineers that are going to be based overseas to do installations, to do troubleshooting, now, I know with telematics, you can do quite a lot of that remotely, but these installations, the product still has to go into an application. So as a business, we have 100 people employed overseas. That's going to have to grow if we're serious about implementing this effectively across multiple markets also. But hopefully it'll grow employment in Monaghan manufacturing it as well. So.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Martin. It's there's a huge amount of consultation that has to be front-ended on something like this to get the recurring revenue. So not all businesses can actually do it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of upfront cost before you're going to be collecting reoccurring revenue. You're absolutely right, Ronan. Yeah. And
thanks, John.
Sorry, go ahead. That's fine, John.
Yeah, no. Thanks, Martin. So if there's no other question at this point, we'll move on to the next part of our presentation.
John, can I just remind everybody that they need to fill in both questions for the polls, please? If they could do that and submit the data, please, we'd appreciate it.
So I guess anyone who hasn't answered yet, you should still see the questions up on the screen, right? So you have that opportunity to answer. So we won't present results just yet. We'll give everybody a little bit more time. We'll move on now to the next section, which is where we'll talk about our projects and the first group of companies that we're speaking with. So the first organization we're speaking with listed is Monaghan Mushrooms. Unfortunately, Richard can't speak today. He's got a personal commitment that's come in very, very fast yesterday. So he sends his apologies. However, we do have Jason from Errigal. Now, Jason, I have your slides here, but I think you want to take control and present yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, if that's okay, John. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll stop sharing and I'll move across to you.
No problem. First of all, thanks very much for having me on. I was at the event in CombiLift as well in 2019 and at the end of 2019, so it's great to see it being rolled out, and it's great from Errigal's perspective to be involved. So a little bit about Errigal. We are specialised in partition systems and ceilings and facades. Our location, we're based in Monaghan, our headquarters in Monaghan. We have a couple of offices in London, Derry and Dublin, and we have over 1,000 highly trained operatives. We've seen quite a bit of growth over the last 8 years in our turnover, and you can see some of our clients there on the right. So what's the challenge? And I suppose this is an industry-wide challenge for us in terms of construction. I'll reference a McKinsey study that was done in terms of digitization from 2015, and it's very much saying that construction is a lagging sector in this regard. This is proven, I suppose, more evident as well in terms of what sort of output are we getting compared to other industries. Construction has a long way to go, I suppose, in this regard. Other industries are excelling, and this is largely down to technology. And this is the challenge for us. But personally, I see it as a great opportunity as well. From Errigal's perspective, to put a great stamp on the industry in terms of technology and using AI and stuff like that. So to tackle this issue, first of all, we need a team. So in Errigal, we have a systems and productivity team. It has a director, 2 business analysts, a data analyst, and a developer. Very much an open team that we express our opinions and ideas and try to help Errigal be as productive as possible. We've done quite a bit of research over the last year or two, and we've kind of figured out that the main value-adding activity that we can add to Errigal is in around labour management. It's the biggest cost. How can we make that more efficient? And that's, I suppose, from a team's perspective, that's our goal. So this is our solution. This is our labour management model. We have 6 buckets here. Within each of these buckets, I suppose you could have another 6 buckets, and that's our pipeline, I suppose, for our department. If you look at the top 3 buckets, we have directors, pipeline, pre-construction, and high-level programming. This is before we go on site, so we need to put the time in up front in terms of agreeing the scopes, learning from previous jobs. How can we make this more efficient? And then getting a plan in place and highlighting any key milestones that might be coming our way. The bottom 3 buckets then, I suppose, is more operational, and this is when we transfer it over to the site. When the site goes live, it's up to them to manage the job as best they can, obviously. We're trying to implement, I suppose, systems and technology to help them do that. Now, just touching on what Martin was saying there, in terms of the skill side of it, that's where we kind of see as a wee bit of a problem here. We find that there's a bit of a cultural change that's needed to kind of adapt to the technology. I suppose in construction, a lot of people use their experience, their know-how, and it's trying to change that and help them. I suppose they kind of see technology as a burden usually at the moment, to kind of put their time into updating these systems and trusting the data that it's spitting out. So that's very much, I suppose, involved in the challenge. And next to that then is, so how are we reporting on each of these? How is our performance targets against the plan? How many boards is the guy putting up? These are the KPIs that we can really dive into if the guys on the ground put in a bit of time and effort up front. So I suppose the projects that we're working on currently that feed into our labour management model is the Errigal app, which was developed in-house. It includes facial recognition, which we have rolled out on, I think, is working now on 13 sites at the moment. Includes AI. Our scoring system as well, which allows our site managers, our supervisors, to provide a score on their operatives based on performance. And this feeds then into our project management pack. And I suppose once we gather this data over time, we can really start to use it and base some of our manning decisions on that. Next is a planned performance reporting, which is really similar to the labour management model, is getting each department and each stakeholder talking to each other, making the estimating to the planning to the site and the commercial side, making that as slick as possible, that everyone's on the same boat, everyone's rowing the same way, and there's no one going off in silos. Next then is training. I suppose we're putting a massive emphasis on training. We've invested in a micro learning platform. This helps us provide small bite-sized training videos to the operatives on site to help us highlight to them best practice for performing tasks on site. We can then get analysis off the back of this. How are they performing? We can give them questionnaires, surveys. We've seen a massive improvement already. Internally, then we have departmental dashboards using Power BI. This is linking up to our ERP systems. I suppose if we take finance, for example, here, very much manually based Excel reports that were being performed. We started creating API links from the ERP system and integrating that with Power BI and providing them with the finished product. So it allows them as employees to focus more on analyzing the data rather than actually preparing it. And that's making them more efficient. We found that they were spending days preparing the data, and by the time that they got around to actually analyze it, they were exhausted from looking at it. So trying to make that slicker for them, faster, and getting more value out of it. We've currently been working on a feasibility study as well with ICHEC, with the view of deciding on the right project for the data value hub, why we're here today. I suppose this was a great study. It highlighted areas that we need to improve, both process areas where we can improve ourselves, and the data value hub. We really want to decide on the right project, something that's going to add value to Errigal, help raise awareness of artificial intelligence in Errigal, start to close that gap that I highlighted in the first slide, in terms of the output that's happening in other industries and in construction. Then lastly, we tested a robotic process automation before Christmas there. Again, really highlighted areas that we need to improve before we can kind of nearly embark on something like that, an automated process like that. All these projects highlight different areas where we can improve, and that's the beauty of it. Next, I suppose, so what's the value we get from digitization? Instead of, I suppose, talking to you, I thought I would show you. This is a test that we done before Christmas on a job. How we measure performance on a job is a CPI calculation. It's a cost value calculation. The goal is 1 or above. For this job, the blue here, is the value, and the black is the cost. So for this job, every week we would sit down with the site team and we would plan ahead for the next week and the next week after that. And then we would get a figure of how many men is required for the works. This would include any issues that they're having, any time that we might have to push some work back or pull work forward. And as you can see, if I just play this video, here, yeah. If you just concentrate on the CPI up here on the right, 1.28. And as you can see, up until the red line, it was going quite well. We were, sorry, the video is just not playing at the moment. There you go. The COVID months obviously put a halt to it. .11. This was basically planning every day, planning every week, and using digitization to kind of discover how many men we need for the job. After the red line then, we decided to kind of let them manage it themselves. And as you can see, the black line is above the value, so it kind of went a wee bit haywire. And I suppose this kind of highlighted areas maybe that we need to improve ourselves. You know, maybe there's a skills gap there in terms of the technology that we're using or trying to use on site. Maybe we need to put more emphasis on the training to help the guys update these systems and get the real output after that. I suppose if you look at the figures here, the budget to complete the job was nearly 500,000. Up until the red line, the value that we completed was 300,000 and the cost was around 300,000. So we were on budget. After that, after the red line then kind of went a wee bit hairier and we ended up losing quite a lot of money. So I suppose this shows the value of digitization to Errigal, and it's up to us now. The challenge is supposed to bridge that gap again, get more people using it, more people believing and trusting in the data. So this is our systems journey at the moment. And more recently, I suppose, as we embark into 2021, some of the softwares that we're thinking of using and investing in, all of them include artificial intelligence in some way, shape or form. McVicar is a device that sits out of a hard hat. UiPath is your robotic process automation, and OpenSpace and BuildDocs are a 360 camera that basically shows the progress of a job. So it shows that Errigal are looking to improve with AI. They're trying to invest in these opportunities, and this is, I suppose, where the data value hub will really help us. So how can the data value hub help our business? It'll accelerate everything that I've just talked about, I suppose. It'll improve our skills internally in our own department. It'll raise awareness in Errigal that we can start to bridge this gap in terms of productivity and output, and make AI something that's new to construction, something that's construction that can really, really benefit from, and allows us to focus more on the analyzing rather than the preparing. That's all from me. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jason. I'll just move across to David Bowe now. So if you stop sharing, I'll be able to take it from there. Thank you. So next, we have David Bowe of 86 Software. You're okay to go ahead, David? I have your slides here and I can advance them.
Yes. Cheers, John. Go on ahead there. So my name is David Bowe. I'm the director of 86. And basically what we do is we provide predictive analysis to the wholesale industry. And all that means is that we're able to predict when customers are about to leave, so that sales reps can quickly reach out and win them back before they do. So for us, it's all about making sales reps more effective. And we have customers now that are able to keep 30% more business when compared year on year when they're using our service. So basically, we started out just from my family's wholesale food business. And in food service, the issue is that you have a huge number of customers that you're supplying, and each one of them could be supplying 10, 20, 30 different products, or buying 10, 20, 30 different products at a time. So for a rep, it's really, really difficult in between that to recognize if any one customer stops buying any particular product. And that's what 86 was developed to do, to assist the rep in keeping more of his business. But since then, we've realized that this is something that's applied not just inside food, but to most businesses that are supplying a large number of consumables to other independent businesses. So if you're thinking like stuff like medicines and medical consumables, hardware supplies, fasteners, even something towards like what's happening at the minute, like a lot of sanitizer and sanitary consumables going into like hospitals, offices, schools, that type of thing. So that's the kind of business that we're looking to help, and that's where we're based. Do you fancy hitting the next slide there, John? Yeah, so for us, you know, what we want to be is recognized as a real authority in what we do. And obviously data is at the absolute core of it. So for us, working with the Data Hub is a real chance to collaborate with third level institutions and people outside of our organization who can really bring more experience and their expertise into our problems and our service to really advance the methods and the algorithms that we use to provide our service. So for us, our project will probably start with researching the data that we have even further to test the assumptions we make in terms of how people buy, and try to uncover patterns that we've maybe overlooked in the past, in terms of recognizing that a customer is about to leave. And from that will obviously decide where we can go in terms of what improvements we can make and the new services we can offer to our customers in the future. But yeah, that's pretty much all from me, John. If anybody is interested in the type of research that we're doing, or would even like to speak a little bit more about the type of predictions we can make and what we can do for sales teams, by all means, please reach out on LinkedIn, or I'm sure, you know, John will share contact details after the webinar. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. We'll now move across to Alan at Entekra. So you're okay, Alan, to go ahead?
Fine. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. No problem. I'll go on mute.
Okay, thank you, John. I just want to commend everybody for setting up this initiative and the Data Value Hub itself. I mean, it's reassuring, I suppose, from our perspective that there is an interest and an active focus in Monaghan and the surrounding counties in this type of thing. So, you know, it's great to be part of this, and you know, I just want to thank John for the opportunity to join here today and sort of let people know what we do and just a little bit more about us. It's early days for us in the hub, but this is more just to sort of get to know what's going on from our side of things and see where it takes us. So just thanks to John and the team for the opportunity. If you want to hit the next slide there, John. I suppose anyone that is familiar with the company already may know a little bit more about what we're doing. For those of you that aren't, we're basically an offsite solutions provider to the US construction industry. We're split across two main locations. Our main manufacturing base is in Modesto in California, and our main technical function is located in Monaghan. So our goal is basically to bring our brand of fully integrated offsite solutions to the US construction industry. Currently, we're operating in a market that is typically 85 to 90% stick built on site. So that's basically they completely build the homes on site with loose materials. We're introducing our brand of pre-manufactured offsite construction to that, and completely converting those customers over to a more efficient process with a higher quality product, and to reduce their cycle time overall. So, you know, we're having great benefits on the US side on that side of things. So, you know, it's very positive from our point of view, and certainly since we began in 2017, we've been on a bit of a roller coaster in terms of that progress. So, you know, from our side of things, it's been incredibly positive. We're operating out of a 200,000 square foot automated facility in Modesto. Capacity on that site, on that plant, is something in the region of 3,000 units per year. We're not there yet. We're hoping to be at full capacity towards the end of the year. It's a ramp up situation on our side of things in terms of getting that up to full tilt. We're currently working with 200 employees on the US side, and I suppose the important thing from our point of view is that all buildings manufactured in California are actually designed and engineered in Monaghan. So next slide there, John, please. So I suppose a bit about the Irish side of the business. Currently in Monaghan, we have 60 staff. That's broken out between finance, estimating, and technical The technical department takes up the vast majority of those numbers. In 2020, we actually doubled our numbers in technical to 50 people. So we've currently about 50 people involved in the design and engineering of the houses that we're producing in California. As was a bit about the technology side of things, from our side of things, we're focused on using the technology, I suppose, to improve communication, to drive efficiency within the business. Obviously, the fact that we're operating an automated facility in California means that we have to have high levels of data and CNC information being transferred across from Monaghan to California on a daily basis. Some of the software and stuff that we've looked at over the past few years in terms of our own development have been to try and improve that communication and to make things more efficient. We're 6,500 miles apart. So from our perspective, it's incredibly important that we get our systems and process correct, and it allows us to expand at the rate that we're expanding. So things that we've done so far would be using 3D laser scanning for our foundation slabs. As you might expect, there's quite a bit of integration from that perspective. We build the offsite manufactured home that has to sit perfectly on that slab when it gets to site. Using that type of technology has allowed us, sitting in Monaghan, know more about that foundation than the guy standing beside it in California. So, you know, things like that have made an incredible difference to us. It removes the potential for human error and lack of information, so we can see all pipe locations, all hold down positions, everything that we require in order to make sure that we're integrating our buildings properly. As part of the process on the manufacturer side, obviously we have to run the machines and the CNC information going to that. So that means from our side on the design and engineering front, we're modeling all of these buildings virtually in 3D, and that allows us to do our brand of offsite construction, which is all about the integration. So we're integrating HVAC, we're integrating all of the different, you know, plumbing elements and that into the building, and to not only ensure that we get our buildings correct and cover our base of the structural frame being correct, but also that the follow-on trades have everything that they need to ensure a smooth process even after we're finished. So that modeling technology and the input that we're putting into that is hugely important to us going forward. It also gives us the ability to do virtual frame walks with the customers prior to manufacturing the building. So some of the technology that we've started using is around allowing them to basically walk through that building up front. It gives them the opportunity to perhaps see in virtual reality what that building looks like, bar taking the architect's drawings or engineer's drawings, or whatever it is being produced before that. So it's been useful in terms of preventing change requests coming back from the customer after the building's been sent to site, and gives them a really good feel as to what we're doing. Plus it clarifies from our perspective what the client's understanding of what they want is. So a very useful tool from our side of things on that. As part of the manufacture process, then we also have a direct link, obviously, to the production control system on the factory floor from Monaghan. That allows us to upload these models and CNC information directly into the software. That software then allows the distribution and management of that information throughout all the machines on the factory floor. From our perspective, that's an important part of, you know, ensuring that the right part gets cut on the right machine in the right order for the right panel and at the right time. So, you know, it's incredibly important from a management point of view. That installation is ongoing. We're hoping to have that fully operational over the next couple of months. So that's just one of the projects that we've on at the moment. We're also starting to pull performance data back off the machines on the factory floor to analyze downtime, to analyze errors or any issues that they're having. It also analyzes all the machine output as well. So from our point of view, centralizing that information is a very good tool from a manufacturing planning perspective and a maintenance point of view, just to be able to plan manufacturing, ensure that, you know, we have as smooth a process as possible on that side. As far as site operations are concerned, we also use a site-based or a cloud-based reporting system that allows the team in Monaghan upload our drawings, upload the site information that's required to actually stand these buildings on site. It allows us to upload our models into that environment as well, so that the team on site can actually view the 3D model of the building as and when they're erecting it, in terms of their understanding of what a drawing represents, and it brings it into reality to them so that they can do their job more efficiently. It also facilitates us getting site reporting live back from those job sites in California back to the team in the office of Monaghan on an ongoing basis. So any change requests reported by the client, any issues that's reported back from site come back through that system on a live basis, allowing us to add photographs and locate exactly on the drawing where that is, just again to improve efficiency from our point of view. I suppose in terms of the data value hub and our interest on that side of things, it's very much in where do we go from here, and what we can do next in terms of improving efficiency. The last 12 months for us have been very much focused on getting production capable and having our design engineering departments capable of producing the correct information to the system and softwares in the manufacturing side. There's been a huge amount of development done on our side of things on that end of it. That's ongoing. We're pretty much getting to the point now where we have those things nailed down. So the next step for us is to improve efficiency and to look at where we can get benefits on the actual front end models that we're creating in the process. So if we're creating a model and we're investing all the time that we do in Monaghan in creating that building virtually on the screen, how can we then get full benefit of having that data right through the whole system, in terms of maybe checking part sizes that are coming off saws or whatever that is going forward. So, from our perspective, we're incredibly interested in the process here, in being part of this. We're grateful to be involved, and we're certainly looking forward to the next weeks and months ahead, and working with the teams to see what we can do. Next slide, John, just to thank you for me. So, as I say, looking forward to the months ahead. Our next 12 months are very much on how we can improve efficiency. We've got the ramp up of the manufacturing facility coming forward to full production on that facility at the end of the year. We're also looking at opening a similar facility in Southern California and LA. So we're hoping to make a decision on that fairly soon. Again, efficiency, scaling up of the business and all that on our side is incredibly important. So, from an employee perspective on our side, it's having everybody working within a system that's as efficient as possible is very important going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. We'll now hand over to Adrian at Exitex.
Hi, John.
Hi, Alan. Hi, Adrian. I'll just move the slides along to your first slide.
Yeah, I'd just like to say just initially, thanks for being invited into this. I do feel a bit in awe with some of the other companies we're involved with, and we can see the progress that they've already made. Exitex is a smallish company. We employ just under 100 people. We started in 1981. It started off just initially as a family business, basically at the back of a family home. And we saw a niche in the market back then for draft proofing products. The fact that the products already in the marketplace weren't really fit for purpose or could have been designed better. And this came from the fact that the MD was already selling similar products in the marketplace, and realized that they really weren't designed as well as what they could have been. So that was the prime goal of the company when it started. Its prime marketplace was the UK and Ireland, and really still today, that's still the case. But we have expanded since then. So we started off initially with maybe 10 people, and mostly family and friends working together. I joined the company back basically at the very start, so it's really all that I've known since leaving university. You can see the progress of the company throughout the years, until where we are today, where we work across 2 sites. We still have the initial business, which is still at the back of the original family home. And then we also now have a warehouse just outside Dundalk, which is where most of our warehousing is done. The manufacturing will be done at the back of the original site, the family home. Yeah, you can see it there now. So IT has always been an important part of Exitex's journey. My background will be IT. I studied IT at university a long time ago now. So we've always been involved from day one of installing a PC, standalone, not networked, right up until today, where we're talking about, blade servers, cloud computing, the internet. We embrace technology and always have tried to keep up, and to use the data along with that to make business decisions. We have designed, I suppose we spent a lot of time designing our own in-house systems. We do have an ERP system, but we have developed a lot of systems around that. We've developed our own warehouse management systems. We've developed our own sales rep systems that they run on their laptops, and they can make their own business decisions based on the information which they're fed live to their laptops. So, listening to David and 86 and his company 86, it's obviously something that maybe we'd be interested in looking at to see how we could benefit from some of the technologies which he's looked at. Over the years, we've always designed our own products. We had a lot of patents on our products, and up until today, where the next generation of the business is using CAD CAM, and we design obviously on using AutoCAD and SolidWorks, Inventor, and we do 3D prints, we do prototyping, and then we also do CNC machining, where we transfer the data down to the CNC equipment, and we can make basically any shape or make products to any specification. We deal with some of the largest door and window manufacturers in the UK, and in fact we do deal with the largest door manufacturer, where they're making up on 2,000 doors a week. So our products will be fed into that company on a just-in-time basis. So we've seen a lot of change over the years. We do try and keep as much up to date as what we can, but we have found probably over the last year or so that the demands on the business to do with COVID, now to do with Brexit, have been quite difficult, to say the least. We've seen a lot of problems over the years with the year 2000 and one thing after another, but I would say over the last year probably has been the most difficult to come to terms with. So we did go to the launch in CombiLift in 2019. We were very excited about the chance of being able to probably get knowledge from other companies, because being a family business and having that mindset where we think that we need to protect everything that we have and not share information, and we're the only ones that sort of know how to do what we're doing. There's always been that aspect of the company, and I think we do realize that we need to broaden our outlook and broaden our horizons. And the data value hub we see as a good opportunity to learn from other people how they're doing things. We're not reinventing the wheel as such, which up until now probably we have spent a lot of time doing, developing things ourselves, because we found by the time we would spec a system for somebody to actually write a program for us, we would have it done ourselves in that time. So we have spent a lot of time developing systems which are not unique, but are unique to us. And now at this stage, I think we realize that we need to change our outlook. We need to embrace, AI as a concept, which we've made steps in that direction since going to the launch in CombiLift. We've employed a graduate who graduated from DKIT just over a year ago, whose speciality is in AI, and he got a first from DKIT. So his final year project was in AI. So we do recognize that we need to move in that direction, but we're still at the stage where we need direction as to how we can apply it and use it to make our data and our manufacturing process better. So whether that's as part of the picking process, stock picking of raw materials, using forklift technology, as Martin has said, or whatever, to go and pick the stuff for you, right down to packing and shipping the goods and making sure that then the customer gets what they've asked for. So when you take companies like Amazon, and I've been dealing with Amazon going right back to, I think, 1997, when you had to actually order the stuff from America and using a dial-up internet connection. So right back to those days, I mean, I don't think I've ever had a package yet delivered from Amazon that was wrong. So I'm not saying Exitex is like that, and but that's what we would like to strive towards. The fact that we all know we can improve, and that's what drives the company and always has driven the company. That no matter, we don't take anything for granted. We always know that we have to keep trying to improve our data, improve how we do things, and improve our customer experience. And now with the world of Brexit, and we're back to customs clearance again, and we've also seen this is has had a very negative influence, especially when you're a European, Irish-based company trying to deal with primarily the UK. It's made it very difficult. Our customer base in the UK don't really understand the problems that we would be experiencing, and the only aspect they would see is maybe if they order something wrong, or they need to return the goods, that involves customs processes and duty, and that aspect of it, which seems to be a bit of a wake-up call for them. But yes, so going forward, the future, we see lots of applications for AI. We see being part of the data value hub has been a very positive thing. It broadens our horizons, opens us up to other people, other technologies, other experience, which we'd like to be part of. So I know we have the in-house capability of doing it, but it's just generally really direction and, finding, the little areas or whatever that instead of going through the pain barrier on your own, that somebody else can just point you in the right direction and save you a lot of pain and heartache. So, yeah, I'd just like to say thanks a lot for listening, and thanks for being invited to today. And we look forward to being part of this and to working with John and Peter and the rest of the guys in the future.
Thank you, Adrian. So before moving on to the next section, we've heard from brilliant speakers all the way through up to this point with Adrian. And if you have any questions, we have a panel discussion coming after this next piece, but please put your questions into the chat, into Zoom chat, and Peter will pick up on those questions for the panel. Before we get to the panel, I'd like to talk about upskilling, and it's come across very strongly all the way through the speakers, this sense of a network, of understanding, how to share ideas. Best practices are found in every organization we've heard from so far, but there's also a recognition that there are other ideas outside. So upskilling is a component of that. To talk about upskilling, the way we go about it is we start by understanding the enterprise. We have a particular approach. Then we've identified a set of programs. Some of those have already converted into courses, which I'll share with you shortly now, that have calendar entry. They're ready to go. And we also have a view on some more advanced courses that we've already outlined that we haven't scheduled to start yet. They'll probably start in May and June and beyond. So the first thing around understanding the enterprise, there's really two dimensions that we have to think about when we think about digital maturity. We have to think about the technology itself, which is digital maturity itself. We also have to think about process maturity. So if you think of Intel in leak slip, it's at level 5 on this chart. Intel are using Lean Sigma in depth, and they're using the capability of artificial intelligence in depth. So they're at a 5. some of the organizations in our region are at level 4, but most would be level 2, level 3, with the aspiration to get to level 4. So it's important to know where you're starting from when you go on this journey, rather than assume it's all wrong. So when we're helping you, what we're doing from the hub is we're trying to gauge where do you sit today, and what's your ambition in your context. Where do you see AI helping you with your product design, with your process improvement, and with your customer experience? And then the projects we work on are tailored to suit what you require. So all of the speakers that you've heard from, they all have different perspectives and different priorities, and we're adaptive to that. So we're not trying to force a journey. We're listening, and then we're adapting based on what we're hearing. It's important to say, however, that everyone needs to have a journey here to get to this higher level of automation. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is you have to assume your competitor is already doing this. So when you look at it from a competitive analysis perspective, different sectors are at different levels of maturity. Jason gave a very good chart from McKinsey showing that, but you still have to assume that there are those who are advancing very fast. And what we want to do is make the organizations we're helping be those organizations, become those organizations that are advancing fast. And there's no reason why a business based in our region can't take on the world. And in fact, everyone we've heard from has global ambition. If you listen to what they've all said, they have a target market. If you can export to the UK, and if you can work in the US, well, what's to stop you working elsewhere in the whole world? Along the way, data is the asset, and it has to be protected. It's a source of competitive advantage, but it's also something that has to be cherished. So cybersecurity comes into this as well. We're not talking about cybersecurity very much today. That's for a later conversation, but securing your data is as important as getting value from your data. So our approach to upskilling, we look at it in 3 areas. We're looking at the analytics side, the process side, and productivity side. Now, on the productivity side, what we're really talking about here is Microsoft technology. So we're very, very lucky that we have direct access to the Microsoft organization. Microsoft Office 365 is a phenomenal product. We could talk forever about that alone, actually. It's such an incredible product. But when you look at Teams in particular, we're going to be helping organizations understand how to use channels and files with SharePoint much better than most are probably aware. And similarly, the power of Microsoft Power BI, Microsoft's superb tool. It's a leader in all the comparative studies on analytics tools of that in that sector. Power BI is the winner. On the process side, you've heard a little bit earlier from Jason about robotic process automation. Microsoft's technology there is called Power Apps, and we will also show organizations how to use this. So within your Office 365 subscription, you get a huge amount. You actually get 26 different products, and we want you to know what they are. We're not here to sell Microsoft. What we're here to do is show you what's possible. We're open to all the other technology platforms as well, but to respect our support from Microsoft, we are definitely very strong on their particular perspective. On the analytics side, this is all about AI, and it's at different levels. There's a level at which we need to engage with the business owners and the decision makers who may not know anything about AI or may know a little bit, and that's at the strategic level, leading into the strategic level. The fundamentals of AI, that's more geared at the technical people themselves within your enterprise. And edge computing is an allied technology to AI, to enable AI on the factory floor where we need the processing power to make real-time decisions. Another important point to make is we're not here to compete with other people who are running brilliant courses throughout Ireland, like ICT SkillsNet, the colleges and institutes and other organizations. We're here to collaborate. We're not here to reinvent the wheel. So when we see courses that are being run elsewhere, we will alert the enterprises in our region that they're on. We will put on courses where we see a gap, where we can't see that course running anywhere, and yet we see a demand among our enterprises that we're helping. So the upcoming courses that we've already got scheduled run in April, and these are each a one-off event of about 3 hours duration. They're free to attend. We need to see a class size of about 12 people. If we get a small number applying, we would then look at rescheduling it. But on the basis that we can get 12 or more, we run the course. If we get more than 12, we get much more demand, we will repeat the course later. So the 3 courses in question: benefits of AI, targeted at business owners; getting started with AI, more geared towards technical staff; and similarly, another level of depth in fundamentals of AI. So we've identified key topics under each of these 3 headings, and the courses will be delivered online in a similar medium to what we have today. And the intention is that they're interactive and that they lead to further interest. And when we talk about further interest, we are structuring a set of courses which run from, depending on, there's 3 here, they run from on either 3 sessions totaling 12 hours or 10 sessions totaling 40 hours. And the final one, 4 sessions totaling 16 hours. So these run, in May and June, subject to getting the participation numbers up. The first one, data strategy, listed here, we're targeting business owners and CEOs to give them a more in-depth view on data strategy. The earlier course I mentioned is more of a taster to get people thinking, and then this leads on from there. In a similar way, number 5, number 6 lead on from the other 2 that are listed on the earlier slide for technical people. So this is looking at, number 5, practical AI for engineers, the concept of deep learning, how computer vision is used with AI, the importance of structured data, and natural language processing, and then some recommended systems, some recommended technology to learn more about. AI on the edge is all about the factory floor high performance computing, and how to understand Intel's solution stack around that. So we also have the strong support of Intel, so we have naturally a bias therefore towards Intel. We look at how to convert a pre-trained AI model and how to optimize the model once built. So those are the courses that we have scheduled coming up. The next thing to mention is our poll. So you will have received the poll. There's 2 questions. The first one was all about where you see your organization's maturity. The second relates to where you see your organization's current level of skills. So if you haven't had a chance yet to complete that poll, please take the opportunity, and we will present the results of both polls after our next session. Okay. And as I said earlier, if you have any questions about anything I've covered here or from the earlier sections, put them in the chat, and Peter will pick them up in this next session. So moving across then to Peter, we're now moving across to our panel discussion. And I'll hand over to you at this point, Peter.
We just need to remind everybody to unmute if they want to ask questions. Peter, sorry.
Yes, of course. As Orla said, please unmute if you want to ask a question. We have none in the chat at the minute, which I'm quite surprised with, given the level of companies we have here. I thought we'd have some interest. So don't be shy. Either put up your hand and Orla will see it, or put your question in the chat and we'll get to you. This is a great event for me. I'm really enjoying it, and it's great to see the companies presenting, right from CombiLift all the way through all to Adrian there in his last presentation. It's been brilliant, and it shows that there is a lot there. I don't know, I can't remember who used to have the saying, a lot done, but a hell of a lot still to do. And that's what I feel. There's a great base there, and we knew that even last November when we were in CombiLift, we knew the base was there, but it's just pulling it out and giving you the tools that Adrian was saying. You are doing a great job. So we're not trying to teach you how to run your businesses. We're just trying to get you aware that there is other opportunities there, so you can test and use. Like the slide is up there. There Barry Kieran with Microsoft, Pat with Insight, myself with ICHEC. Use of all the tools there, so don't be afraid to use them. You know, whatever questions you have, we will have the answers. Whether you use the answers or not is up to you. So don't be afraid. I love the point of Adrian reaching out to David, and that for me is what this whole thing is about. Developing an ecosystem. We have the skills in the region, so just use them and assist each other. Ideally, in a non-COVID world, Adrian's company and David's company would have been sitting in a co-located thing, and that's how the knowledge transfer would be at its optimal, where you're sitting working. You're working on one project, I'm working on another project. How do you do this? I do it this way. How does your company do this? I do it this way. And that's how the ecosystem will grow eventually, and we will get back to that. I've no doubt we will. So anyway, that's enough for me. As I say, we still have no questions coming in, so I'm going to start one, and I'm going to direct it at Barry, who is the CEO of the Irish Manufacturing Research. We're very, very lucky to have IMR as a partner in the Northeast Innovation Hub. Barry does great works with loads, thousands of SMEs throughout the country, and IMR also one of only 2 European Digital Innovation Hubs, or EDIHs as they're known, that are currently funded in Ireland. So my question to Barry, well, it's in 2 parts actually, is one, like how would you see technical readiness and innovation in Ireland as opposed to other countries in Europe, which as we said throughout this call, Europe and the world are now our competitors. It's not just the people down the road. So how would you see our readiness in Ireland compared to those ones? And also, what suggestions, if you have any, that these manufacturing companies on the call today can move up that scale?
So thanks, Peter. A great question. When we look into Europe, and we have teams of people have been working in Europe over the last number of years, and we have been on lots of international trips with companies. We've brought them to see the best of what's going on in Europe. My summary is this, that Ireland is behind in general terms with its adoption of Industry 4.0, digitization, AI adoption, robotics adoption, versus a lot of these leading countries. I guess the bellwether one is Germany for sure, and it certainly is the country to watch. Some aspects in the UK potentially, but certainly Germany. The good news is though, technology has significantly dropped. And there's a real opportunity now as digital technologies are being standardized. It's much easier now for companies to engage and adopt them. You did mention earlier, or John mentioned earlier, about Intel and where that sits on the curve, and it's certainly a leader in this space, both from the products it develops and the solutions it develops, but also the way it's adopted these technologies into its organization. The reason why only the Intels of this world were doing that over the last, say, 10, 15, 20 years is because it was very costly. Now the cost points have dropped. So the great news is it is now affordable, or much more affordable, for small and medium enterprises to engage. But I would have to say Ireland is behind the curve, and certainly behind countries like Germany. But actually, even in Germany, though, and talking to companies over there, and at German government level, they are worried in Germany that they're even behind countries such as South Korea and China. So there's, so Ireland is way down that list. So we have a job of work to do, but the good news is that the cost points have come down, and certainly they know from independent assessments done, the willingness of Irish people and industries and businesses in Ireland to adopt new technologies is very high. So I think we're well positioned, but we're not where we need to be.
Brilliant, Barry. Thank you very much. Yeah, you say, as I said, a lot done, a lot more to go. Yeah. Another thing that's sort of come out of me quite a lot through this, and we knew it, and John Shaw has spent a lot of time on the education strand of the data value hub. So technology and skills is something that is worrying companies down in the regions. I think worrying is not too strong of a word. So if I could go over maybe to Kieran. Kieran is the National Technology Officer in Microsoft, and maybe you can give us some of your thoughts on what we need to do to move away from this position that is worrying, or is it this disadvantaged position, if you want to call it that, by getting the right technology skills and getting them developed and available for not just, you know, the technical people that might be albeit using Microsoft or other technologies, but for all people on this call, regardless of what their starting level is.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, and thanks everyone for attending today, and thanks for having me. Actually, I'm delighted to be able to participate. Although I work for Microsoft, I'm as much interested in this in a personal capacity. Although I'm not technically a local boy, I'm originally from Armagh, just up the road, so I'm close enough. Look, on the skills side of things, I'd just like to echo Barry's point really about, he talks about, you know, the drive ahead in AI and the kind of general view that the drive ahead in terms of digitalization generally, and the view that Ireland is kind of falling behind. And I would agree with that. And in fact, we in Microsoft did some research about a year ago. It looked at companies across Europe and benchmarked Ireland against them. And in general, Ireland was falling behind. And there's some really startling insights from it. You know, like 65% of companies across Europe felt that AI would have a significant impact on their business. 85% felt that it would uncover new business opportunities for them. But an astounding only 4% of companies were actually doing anything about it. And that was Europe-wide. And when you compare Ireland into that, they were pretty much, you know, sort of halfway down the charts for the rest of Europe. And one of the things that was identified was the skills challenge broadly across Europe, but specifically in Ireland. And it's interesting because personally, I think if you look at this in terms of supply and demand, there's a need for AI and its incubation and development and use in companies as part of the digitalization. But the supply is actually there in terms of at least training for people, but the demand isn't there. So the need's there, but the demand isn't there. And there are multiple reasons for that. And I think what the research that we had conducted in partnership with Ernst & Young.
I can chat to you anytime you want. Is that okay?
Yes, no bother. That's
brilliant.
Whoever's that, can you please go on mute?
Sorry, Kieran, I muted you trying to mute somebody else. Sorry, if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Kieran?
I guess you can hear me now.
I can, thank you.
Yeah, right, okay. So look, what we found was one of the challenges was there was a real lack of understanding of the importance of AI at the board level and at a very senior level in the company. So that's a challenge. There's a wealth of training courses that are out there. You know, the big multinationals like ourselves, AWS, Google, there's a huge amount of training available for digitalization, for big data, for analytics, for AI skills. The vast majority of it made available freely, by the way. So it's not that there's a lack of availability of opportunities to upskill people. It's the actual uptake of that that's challenging. And I think the real challenge for skills lies in the recognition for companies to identify AI is going to be really important for them in the future. It was really reassuring to hear some of the earlier speakers relate to sort of an acceptance and an understanding that they do need to transform their business. I thought that was really great to hear. So look, I think the capabilities are out there, the training opportunities are out there. I think you know, what's being proposed with the hub here is excellent in terms of making that available. I think you start by looking at your own workforce and upskilling them, providing your own workforce the opportunities to understand what AI is and what it means for your business at the kind of abstract level. And then specifically in terms of the hands-on skills or using discrete pieces of technology, you know, you work with your technologists in the company to build that up. I think sometimes companies think my staff or my people might think about moving on if I equip them or skill them up too much. I don't think that's a problem at all. Actually, I think what people are looking for generally is the opportunity to work on and engage with new things and new technology. And it's, you know, a real benefit to your staff and to the company in general if you can provide that. There's a wealth of opportunity out there. It just needs to be tapped into.
Brilliant, Kieran. Thank you very much, and very interesting answer. I like what you said. There is a wealth of training courses out there, and maybe there's too many, and companies need to be handheld a little bit as to which ones are the specific ones for their organization. So maybe that's something that the Data Value Hub can work with you and other partners in identifying the courses that are specifically valuable for the companies that are in the region. Another thing that's come up quite a bit during the whole thing is data. There's a lot of questions on that. I think it was Brian that actually said, look, the core principle of this hub is extracting value from this data. And a lot of organizations have data and they believe that it's valuable, but they're not, they're reluctant to let go of it in case something happens. So if I could direct a question at Pat Dempsey here, who's from Insight, deals with a lot of companies that do give Insight their data. So if I could ask Pat, like, how does Insight deal with these SMEs to assure them that their data will be secure and will be only used for the purposes intended?
Excellent. Thanks for the question, Peter, and congratulations to everybody, and thanks for being involved. Just if I come to that question in a second, Peter, but maybe just 30 seconds of context for anybody who might know that Insight is the National Research Centre for AI and Data Analytics, and it's based across all the universities in Ireland. It's state funded by True Science Foundation Ireland, who launched their strategy just earlier this week. So I think just to add on to what Kieran just said, there's a whole wealth of research scientists and skills available in AI that is available to the sector all Ireland wide. So what I'd like to show is that, and we won't get into it all today, is that there is a pretty low barrier of entry for companies all across Ireland to work with the universities in fundamental and basic research and how it's applied to industry. So that's another strength of the key government investment in the national AI strategy. So that's just one point to note. I suppose to answer the key question is, obviously data is the most important thing within any project, as Peter and all the teams have been suggesting. So we would have very strong processes in place all the way through contractual work, through technology transfer offices for IP management, intellectual property management, through GDPR and so on. So we would have many years of experience working with the largest multinationals such as Microsoft and such as Google and such as Intel. So we work very closely with them on specific projects, if you like, that would have a full contract value in place of them. So we're very aware that we're taking a lot of data. We potentially take data, or we badge the data, or we become part of the company or the organization. We have internships, we have fellowships, we have students, and at the end of the day, our business in the university sector is to develop graduates, very strong PhD level graduates, and then make them out into industry. So I suppose the point I would make, Peter, to answer that question is that we're very careful, and we have a chain of custody of command of any data that is involved in any of our projects. We have projects that are multi-year, multi-million euro projects, and we have projects that would be in a matter over a summer months for an intern, for example. All of them are under the rigor of data protection, data confidentiality, and we would never do anything with data that's not part of what the written contract is. So when companies engage with the research providing organizations, RPOs that are state funded, application areas, they're all under the National IP Protocol through Transfer Knowledge Ireland. So we would be working with SMEs all across Ireland to develop tools for the enterprises to analyze and to understand their particular sets of data and to act on that with privacy in mind. And I just see in the chat there, someone's asked, do companies have enough data to do this? Yes, absolutely. Most companies have far too much data, and usually a lot of the success can be looking at longitudinal data. In other words, that might be historical data that could be totally anonymized, it could be totally synthesized and so on. And our organization, we have 450 people who have developed suites of tools, for example, that can run on that data to do insightful things that no one would ever have seen before. So it's a very exciting area, and I think my message and long answer to a short question, Peter, is that the state has also invested in developing this capability at the university sector, and it's not bound within the universities. Our modus in life is we have state aid funding, we use it appropriately because it's taxpayers' money, but we make it available to industry. So we're very excited to be part of this innovation.
Brilliant.
Peter, can I just add to that very briefly?
Of course you can, Kieran. Yep.
Yeah, just look on the data point, and do companies have enough data? They absolutely do, and Pat was right to say that. I think the challenge is sometimes it's latent data and they don't know they have it. And you know, there's a litany of success stories of companies just dramatically transforming what they do when they find new ways to do things. And it was quite interesting. Martin at the beginning from CombiLift talked about, you know, the sort of uptick in the business with respect to collecting telemetry from devices that are out in the field and the predictive maintenance side of things. And you know, when you look at that, I mean, I worked with a company a few years ago. They actually make pumping equipment. They're the largest supplier of pumping equipment globally for the oil and petrochemical industry, and they make pumps and actuators and all these kind of things. But 75% of their profits comes from their maintenance contracts. And they can be even more efficient in relation to that because they get all this live telemetry being streamed in, and you know, you use AI and big data and analytics for predictive maintenance around that. So I was delighted to hear Martin talk about that from the CombiLift perspective, and it's bang on target. And just even, you know, kind of generic manufacturing as well. You know, when you start collecting data and telemetry from production lines, you can really look at optimizing operations significantly. If you get a good data set from a golden day or a golden run or something like that, you know, you can start to make all sorts of adjustments. So the data's there, it's just not being used.
Yeah, and I would agree.
I jump in there, if that's okay, to be maybe a bit controversial. I kind of understand the question that was asked because we work, and as I know yourselves do, with lots of companies, and there are many companies on this journey, as I said, between the Intels of this world who every piece of data that you could imagine at any one point in time, over 50,000 parameters are being measured and streamed live to somebody in the factories and the facilities to make some decisions on. And for a lot of small medium enterprises, although it's a true statement to say that they have data, I think, but they just don't know they have it. What does that mean? You know, maybe on a machine that they've bought in has some compute technology on the side of it, it's measuring stuff, but you're probably not looking at it to see what it can do for you from a business point of view. I think, you know, they're hidden behind walls that you don't realize are there. Or that sometimes you have data on things like even Excel spreadsheets that you're gathering, but actually by just applying some even things as basic SPC statistical data analysis on them, you'll be able to unleash information that can help you make better business decisions. But I do understand the context of the question from a lot of small medium enterprises, because they feel that, you know, oh my God, I look at an Intel and see what it's doing, and sure, I'm, you know, producing these small parts, a small family run business, you know, I can't get into this game, it's going to be too expensive for me. And so I think there's an education level about explaining to companies, and I think, you know, Pat and Kieran kind of have alluded to this, look, you have data, we need to help educate you and meet you and talk to you about what you have to show you what's possible with the data that you have. That's the first thing, and that's why the hub, I think, is really important to do that. But the second thing is to also help you figure out with some of the low cost technology how you can unleash that data. So if a machine is sitting in isolation in your factory, can we pull the data off, say, 2 or 3 of those machines through some cost affordable model or way onto, say, a central server somewhere? So we're able to concatenate the data sets to be able to give you some better and more useful business information. So there's a bit of a digitization strategy that is required, but there are low-cost ways of doing that. And so I think the invitation should be that the companies bring that forward through the hub, and then we'll pull us in on a case-by-case basis to try and see what we can do to help you see what's possible for your factory.
Yeah, and if I could just add one point to that, Barry and Kieran's comments there, you know, what we find is the very first thing when somebody comes to a big research organization like Insight is that we try to help them to understand their own enterprise data, and, you know, also talk about the possibilities of integration with open data, with open set data that will be government data and stuff like that. And there are 4 main areas that SMEs look at: is the optimizing business processes, customer segmentation, which we heard a little bit about earlier on from 86 Software, and to repurpose that data to see for new insights and to improve products and services. And I suppose the key point is that the hub and this application and the partners do lower the value entry to this technology system, and it is government investment, so it is there to be exploited.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you very much, Trevor. And I will say agree with Pat and Kieran. I would definitely agree with Barry in that, you know, companies, they have data and they need to be shown how to extract that data and get it onto one central focus, so that the data that is joined together is much more valuable than data in isolation. And that's the thing. And it was Paul Clifford said we would have loved to have been going around and knocking on doors and going into your organizations and physically helping you to extract that data. That cannot happen at the minute, but it will happen. And whether we have to bring a consultant up from IMR to go into your premises to assist you with that, that's what we will try to do. So yeah, never be afraid that you don't have enough data. You definitely have enough data. Extracting it might be a difficult problem, but it's not an overcome. It can be overcome, and we will assist you in doing that. There was a couple of questions in there with in relation to training and education and specific courses. I will take that offline. I won't, I don't. We're a little bit over time now, so I won't dwell on those questions. But all I would say is, look, if there is a specific need for an education course or a skills gap in your organization, talk to the John in the data value hub. He will either direct you in the right, send you in the right direction, or if there's enough of demand in the region for that specific skills gap, we will deliver, the data value hub will deliver a course to meet that need. So just talk, but if I could take that question offline. So with only 10 minutes left on time, I'm going to stop this segment and I'm going to pass back to John for the wrap up and sort of where to go next.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Barry, Kieran, Pat. Thanks, Peter. So we'll touch on the poll results. So I think Orla, you're on the line, and yeah, we'll display the results now. So what we're seeing here, you should see them on the screen. You can maximize it if you're able to see it. But for those who can't see it or can't see the thing, so on AI maturity, we're giving 5 levels to that. So from awareness all the way up to transformational. About 60% of the respondents would say they're at the awareness level, while only 8% are at the transformation level and 4 at systematic. So if you take, level 3, 4, and 5 together, you're at 20% approximately. There's obviously some rounding errors here because it doesn't add up to 100, but you have about 20% of the organizations are at that level. The majority are at the awareness lower level. In terms of AI skills, it's similar. About 4% would say that they have widespread AI skills, comprehensive AI training linked to business objectives, about 4%, while about 10% would say expert staff members lead AI initiatives. And then about 17, some staff use AI. So if you take those together, you're at the same. You're at about 31% between those 3. So about 50%, but 49% are where they're saying no staff in the organization skilled in AI. So this would suggest there's a big opportunity here to help organizations. Okay. So not everybody answered the poll, but for those who did, those were the results we got. So moving on then to our final section, I'm conscious of time, how to get involved. So to talk about how to get involved, it really begins with the question, why get involved? Why would you want to engage? Before you ask how, why would you want to? We've heard a lot about Industry 4.0. I'll talk briefly about the benefits of that and a little bit more on the technology. The impact of not digitizing, that's an important thing to talk about briefly as well. And then just a little bit more about our incubator projects. We heard from great speakers from organizations earlier. I'll talk about how that process works, and then finally how to contact us. So Jason talked earlier about relative maturity of different sectors. If you think about that from a different angle and ask the question, how many organizations had to scramble in 2020 as a consequence of COVID in order to compete? Now, we have data from the UK, which shows that in May and June, about 85,000 businesses launched their e-commerce site for the first time as a consequence of COVID. And the 3 highlighted, manufacturing, food, construction, those 3 were at the top of the table. They had probably the most to gain and the most movement to make in that regard. So why engage? Well, you have to assume your competitor is already doing this. You also have to think about what the potential is to serve your customer more. So from the outside in, we have that. There's also the reality of the internal aspects of the business, how to run your processes better and faster and more consistently. And then there's the product that you have yourself. How might you design it better, or indeed introduce a layer of digitization into the product, where data becomes the product in some organizations. It's sobering to point out that Amazon saw a 50% growth in their business in 2020 because of COVID. So currently, Amazon are building Ireland's largest ever warehouse near City West, near Dublin. And you'll soon see Amazon prime trucks and vans on the roads of Ireland. The demand and the growth of their business in Ireland has reached that level where it's activated the need to do that. They are a world leader in the use of AI, and they are a big beneficiary of COVID. So every business has had to come up with its own strategy to compete in the face of a world where the customer is now at home and the retail stores were disrupted and closed for a large part of the year. The other point to make, another sobering point to make, is that anybody in this world who is fluent in English and has a good internet connection has suddenly become your competitor in one way or another. So we face this enormous competition, and Barry touched on it, that while Germany is strong, Germany itself is being is witnessing ferocious competition from places like Korea and China. So with the innovation projects, with the incubator projects, these represent an opportunity to learn by doing. So we have upskilling, learn some theory, learn some ideas, but learn by doing is another way to do that. Now, we will help your enterprise with the first project for free. We have to agree the terms of that project, but we will help you for free. On Industry 4.0, time is very tight. I'm not going to talk too much about this other than to say it all began in Germany. Germany 10 years ago, facing very stiff competition at the time, looked at how to do that. If you take hourly wages, somebody in Southeast Asia, $1 an hour, there's no way Bavaria can compete with that. Bavaria is the richest region of the European Union. In order to compete with that, it was a case of reframing the problem, reframing the question. Make better decisions faster. That's the essence of Industry 4.0, and that is the purpose of AI in an enterprise. Make better decisions faster. And we're here to help enterprises in our region adopt those practices, which began over a decade ago in Germany. Now, the benefits are right across the board for your business: improve customer satisfaction, reduce equipment downtime, improve workplace safety, reduce process errors. And all of the technology that we're talking about, and this came up on the panel discussion as well, all of this technology is already around a decade or more. There's nothing really new conceptually in this technology. What is new is that the technology is now cheaper, it's more accessible, it's more reliable, it's easier to use. So I'm not saying it's all off the shelf, but a large proportion of this is readily available. And by getting the light switched on to your data, you can then expose what we would call the hidden factory. So you could say, well, what if I don't do this? What if I say I don't want to do this? Well, if you add up all the costs in your business of rework, scrap and delay and errors and returns and everything, you're paying for that. And if you aggregate it up, you're paying for a hidden factory inside your enterprise. So the sobering first lesson or first step is to switch the light on and measure that, and then decide what you want to do with that. So in many cases, a hub project can often be a measurement project to get lights on to the data and then decide, okay, where might we optimize? It's all back to that earlier chart. Where are you on that maturity curve? In some businesses, it can be a low 2, in which case the hidden factory is a very, very big issue. For many of the other companies, all who presented today, they've been tackling these issues of rework, scrap and delay for several years now, but there's still opportunity to improve. So when we assess projects, it all begins with a conversation. It's up to you as the enterprise to decide what is it that you think can be done. So with technology in mind, do you have a concept for a new product? do you have a concept to make your business run more efficiently, or do you have a concept for a new way to serve your customer? Now, we have an application process. It's now all online on our website, where we ask you to describe what benefits do you see coming from this? What commitment realistically can your organization make in terms of some of your people's time? And what data do you have? And when we see all that together, we can then put together from there, a project scope, a plan. We will then report out progress routinely at a pace that suits you to chart progress during the project life cycle. We've clear deliverables, clear milestones. And then the analysis activity takes place. It depends on the nature of the project. Some projects would be lightweight in terms of analytics, and some of them are very deep into machine learning algorithms. And then based on that, we will make recommendations for where to go next. Is it a case of introducing robotic process automation in the way that Errigal have done some work there, or computer vision in the way that Entekra have done some great work there? Factory floor robots may have a place, real-time measurements, predictive algorithms, or indeed expert systems. So it'll all come out of that analysis work. So our office, our office is based Armagh Road in Monaghan. This week and next, there's furious painting going on in there. If you went to visit, you would see the office being fitted out. The intention is that we will use that space for our projects, for workshops, and for product demonstrations. When COVID has passed, we also anticipate that video calls like this will continue now to be part of our new way of working. But I think we miss the face-to-face opportunities as well to work. And also when we're looking at product demonstrations and working with devices, it's easier to do it there and then in our incubation hub location. To contact us for more information, I mentioned our website. It's all there, our whole story. For training, you can register your interest on the courses there. For incubator project ideas you have, you can register your interest there as well. And I would just like to say thank you to everybody who has participated today. So we have 18 organizations made this work. It began with a vision, with Paul Clifford, with Brian Quinn and Peter Woods. It began with a vision. Huge support from Martin McVicar in CombiLift to inspire us all to think about this challenge. And then with the wonderful team in Enterprise Ireland and the support from IMR and Insight and the local enterprise office with John McIntyre, Enterprise in Monaghan with Finn Bardaly, everybody played an enormous role. Obviously, Kieran McCorry from Microsoft, David Maloney from Intel, all played an amazing role to get this moving. And it was wonderful to hear today from six organizations who see the opportunity and the potential of all of this. So thank you everybody for your time and for your participation. And we look forward to working with everybody. We'll have other events like this. We welcome all your feedback on how today went. And I suppose final word is thank you, everybody.
Thanks, John. Just a reminder, folks, that we'll be sending out the recording and the slides to all attendees later on. And thank you very much for attending.
So,
thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Take care.
Thank you all.